Hey, what's up guys? JB here. Now, as many of you may have already seen in the notices, equipment in War of the Visions is getting a new tier of quality. Items are now going to be able to get up to a potential 6-star rating with the first batch of items hitting global this coming week. And I think I can already hear some of you groaning out there, thinking about all of the additional farming you're going to have to do to upgrade your existing equipment. I'm happy to report that I do have some good news on that front. So let's dive into the system, see what it's all about, look at all the things that we're going to need to upgrade our items, and also highlight some specific equipment that I really like and the upgrades that they're getting. And first, let's touch on the new materials that are going to be needed to craft +6 items. And really, it's all centered about this new material, HeartQuartz. And there's actually 4 different types of HeartQuartz, each one corresponding to a different rarity tier. And HeartQuartz is going to be a resource that is obtainable via a couple of different methods. First and foremost, it's going to be via arena rankings. And depending on your rank, you're going to start accruing a new currency called crafting metal currency. And this is a currency that can also be obtained through daily missions as well. Now, this crafting metal currency is going to be used to acquire these HeartQuartz materials. And each rarity of quartz is going to require a different number of currency in order to buy them. And that ranges from 3 for a rare quartz up to 15 for an ultra rare one. And from what I understand on the Japanese side, you are actually limited to buying these HeartQuartz in the shop to 1 per day per rarity type, as shown in the picture here. Alright, so how much farming are we going to have to do to actually make a +6 item? What are we going to need? Is this going to be the grindiest thing of all time? Well, I have some pretty good news here. Unlike when we were going from a +4 to a +5, we're not going to need another +5 item here or another 63 recipes in order to upgrade to a +6 tier of quality. Instead, just a single recipe as shown here in the picture. Along with that recipe, for each rarity tier, it's going to require a standard amount of materials and in terms of the books and other crafting mats that are needed. Now, in addition to what I've shown here, you will need whatever is the main crafting material used to make that item, whether it's fluids or crysts, yarns, or etc. I've not shown these here in the graphic as they're going to be different for each and every item, but the takeaway is that the number of those materials needed to actually go up and craft a +6 is really a drop in the bucket compared to the total that we generally need to craft a complete +5 item. So generally that's just going to be a couple hundred of those materials or less, depending on the rarity tier. Books as well, you can see this is a pretty small amount compared to what it takes to fully complete a +5 item. So definitely a huge sigh of relief here, when it comes to the level of farming that's going to be needed to acquire these +6 items. So assuming you have that +5 item already, the main gating factor here is really going to be those HeartQuartz materials that we touched on. But again, if you're doing your daily missions and running arena every week, those are going to start adding up over time, and I think it's actually going to be very accessible for most players. Alright, now let's actually dive in and start looking at some of these items. But before getting into some of the MR or UR quality gear, I just want to highlight the SR equipment here for a moment. And I think this system is a very nice change overall for newer or maybe more casual players that really haven't had an opportunity to build up all of the MR or UR equipment yet. SR equipment, across the board is getting a very nice bump up, not only in the base stats of the item, but more importantly in the passives that are tied into them. And those passives are going to actually get increased to a level that we've only previously seen on UR quality equipment. For example here, slash weapons are going to get increased from 13 slash attack that they have today up to 20 slash attack. Or in the case of armor, that 7 damage resistance is getting bumped up to 10 damage resistance. Now again, this is a level of passive that we've only previously seen on UR quality gear. But here's a couple of more examples. The power glove, this actually could be a good interim option for your Garvel or maybe your Sweetheart Salir if you hadn't had an opportunity to farm up the dark gloves. Likewise, the Vega gun here, and this is one that I've actually always kind of liked, mainly the aim version, and that one is getting a bump up to 31 base accuracy, which is very, very nice. Another interesting note on the Vega is that it doesn't have any negative agility stat tied into it like all of the MR level guns do, so I do like it for that reason as well. But you can see here, they're both getting that bump up of 20 to their respective damage types, and I think this is a great overall change for this SR equipment. upgrades, this gear actually becomes, somewhat viable even for competitive PvP use for newer or returning players that maybe haven't had an opportunity yet to build up and farm that MR or UR quality equipment yet. And I dare say that, for equipment types that don't really have a lot of options, the UR tier passive that these items are getting may even make them interesting choices for top level veterans, at least until we have more MR or UR +6 options down the road. This SR gear is all very accessible to anyone, since it's farmable via story quests at any time. So I really like this change for that reason. A lack of access to competitive or viable equipment has been a problem in the game for a very long time, and I'm happy to see that this change helps address that issue, on top of the other changes that they've made previously, like the Farplane Archive and the Key Quest systems. Moving now into some MR rarity gear, and again I'm going to highlight a few pieces here, and maybe some gear that's kind of collecting dust or not seeing much use these days for some players. And a couple of my favorites in this batch are the Golden Armor and the Golden Helm, and these are a couple of the very first items that we actually got access to in War of the Visions way back when it was released. And mostly they've kind of fallen out of favor, as we've gotten access to newer and more compelling options. These items though at +6 are getting a very interesting niche, on top of the base stat upgrades that they're getting here, but just look at the new passive that they're getting at the +6 version. Each now is going to be providing a 50 debuff resistance to the damage type that they're specializing in. Golden Armor here specifically is getting that 50/debuff resistance, and this suddenly is becoming a very nice play now for countering units who are trying to imperil your slash resistance. Units like Astrius, Leal of the Bold, Gilgamesh, and others. Even better is that this passive will stack with general debuff resistance as well as an all attack type debuff resistance that you might be able to get from buffs or trust stones. Really nice upgrades for these items, and definitely carves out the niche for them in the game, so I really like it. Continuing on here, and we're going to look next at the Golden Axe, and we don't actually have a lot of axes in the game, so that alone is going to make any upgrade it gets pretty nice. So looking here, it's going to get a very nice boost to its base attack, and on top of that it's getting that 10 crit damage up. So pretty interesting sort of pure damage related play here. Even better though, the Feeds Lacerna, and this one similar to what we were just looking at with the Golden Armor, is getting that 50/debuff resistance. That's big time for a cloth user. Getting that high chance to resist that slash debuff, that's just going to help you avoid getting one shot in a lot of cases. So really nice here. And again, this is going to stack with that 25% all attack resistance debuff that you can get today from Trust Stones. And suddenly this is going to start making it very difficult to land some of those slash imperils moving forward. Moving on and highlighting a couple more weapons here, and I think that these two were definitely used here or there in their niche situations, but not items that I was really seeing used widely out there. Now, first off is the Magistral Rod, and this one I've seen certainly being talked about a little bit more as of late since Terra's release, and sort of trying to formulate different quick summon strategies. This one though is getting a nice defensive boost here. It's adding a 7% to both dark and light resistance, and those are certainly two of the more sought after elemental resistances in the game. Dark and light will always have a place in the meta, so very nice defensive option here, and it's essentially giving this item a total of 4 passives, which is really nice as well. Moving next to the Rune Blade, and this one was always interesting for that 8 slash resist that it was bringing on top of already having nice attack firepower on it. The +6 version sort of stays in line with that, adding a nice amount of base attack to the item, as well as that 10 slash attack modifier on top of it. So this actually becomes more or less equivalent to what our Golden Blade is today, but provides that nice 8 slash resistance as well. So I can definitely see this being used a little bit more often, as you're not really sacrificing all that much firepower and getting that additional benefit to boot. This one actually does have a pretty nice aim version as well. What about a couple of UR tier items though? Now, Platinum Rope here, and this one at one point in the game was the de facto armor to put on all of your cloth units, and it definitely still holds a nice niche in the game if you're looking for that 10% missile resistance that it brings. Again though, similar to the Feeds Lucerne, I think that it's maybe just lost some favor in recent times, and I don't see it being used nearly as often as other pieces out there, such as the Survival Vest or Galmia Coat or even the Black Garb and others. In terms of the Platinum Armor here below, I wouldn't say it's so much a forgotten item, but I think it's something that people have definitely wanted, especially since it got upgraded with that 10 10 single target resistance. It's just that it's so difficult to get, acquiring essentially hundreds of thousands of PvP medals, only obtainable through free match or class match. Even myself, who's a very dedicated player in that arena, I've not even been able to farm enough to get a +5 version of this yet. That said, both of these items in their +6 become quite nice. The platinum armor here is getting an additional passive for 15% hit points added onto it. Very nice upgrade in its base stat hit points as well, adding another 220 on top of it. The creme de la creme here though is this platinum armor though. It's adding nearly 300 hit points on top of what it had before. In addition to that, it's adding the 50 all element debuff resistance, and that's effectively cutting in half your chance to be element imperiled. Now sadly, this one will not stack with the 25% trust stone passive that we can get today, but we are seeing more general debuff resistance abilities added to the game, which would stack pretty nicely with this. So if I wasn't already doing so before, I'm definitely saving all of my PvP medals to try and get this platinum armor as quick as I can. Next here, I want to highlight a group of weapons which at their +6 form are really upping the ante for the accuracy level that they're bringing, not only in their base stats, but also with the new passive that they're getting. First off, we have the Lunar Tomb and the Rune Bow here on the left side. Now the Rune Bow especially is a weapon that hasn't really seen a lot of play in the game until now, but with both of these weapons, you can see they're now bringing a total of 38 accuracy. Very, very nice, and certainly give you an option there to maybe ditch the Alex ring and use a piece of armor instead, which is definitely nice for that added flexibility. Along the same line on the right side, we have the Ice Spear here, and between the base stats and the passive, it's getting a total of 34 accuracy. And this item was already, amazing, especially for Aranea and Victora, and are definitely both units who would really love to have access to this additional accuracy, so thumbs up on that one for sure. Lastly, the Plat Mace here, and now with this one, you'll notice it doesn't actually have any base accuracy in its stats. Well, it does get that 10 accuracy passive added onto it. This is definitely maybe a little bit odd. However, I did want to point it out because it is something that I think would actually pair very, very nicely with an item like the Silver Rimmed Spectacles, which does bring quite a bit of base accuracy to it, so definitely maybe keep that pairing in mind. Alright, next here I'm going to highlight another group of weapons, and these ones with their +6 form are getting sort of a PvE based focus. And that's because all of these items are getting a passive which is going to increase your maximum damage cap by 1,000. And this is definitely very nice for players out there who would like to compete in trials or guild raid content, but haven't really had the opportunity to build up a trust stone which has this passive. The only sort of questionable one here for me is the Dark Glove, and that's purely because we don't really have very many options for gloves in the game. So energists out there, I think, may be patiently waiting for a new PvP-focused +6 weapon. So we'll have to see, when that's going to come along. All right, so that's a look into +6 weapons, guys. And, in terms of all the items, this was really just sort of scratching the surface and mostly just focusing in on some of the early gear that we're going to be getting access to with the system, and definitely a few of my favorites of the bunch. Eventually, I do believe that they're going to revisit all of the old +5 gear and enhance all of them. And that's a process that they've been slowly going through on the Japanese side. So we're going to have a lot more to look forward to in terms of the +6 items in the future. My general conclusion and overall thought here, though, is that this is a very nice positive change for the game. For starters, as we talked about, the level of farming that we're going to have to do to attain these upgrades isn't really increasing in a significant way. And that's a huge sigh of relief, for myself, and I think for pretty much everyone else out there. The main thing that's going to be holding players back here is that slow rollout of the HeartQuartz material, which we'll have to collect and earn over time. I am actually glad to see that those are actually going to be obtained via methods that I think most active players are already doing today, whether it's arena or daily missions. In that regard, I think that makes this system very free-to-play friendly, and from what I understand on the JP side, there really hasn't been any push to monetize or make bundles with these HeartQuartz. So that gets a thumbs up for me as well. I think we have enough of that in the game already. I do also really like and think it's a big positive that some old and maybe more forgotten or lesser used equipment are getting some nice targeted upgrades to give them a unique value or niche use case in the game. Heavy accuracy weapons such as the Ice Spear or Rune Bow will allow players to get to an accuracy level in the ballpark of using an Alex ring and give more flexibility to using an armor piece instead. I do love some of those armor pieces really focusing on that debuff resistance as well, which sort of gives us an option to help counter some of those really powerful limit breaks that are in the game today. So overall, I'm very happy with what I've learned on this 6-star system, and I'm excited to see more as we move forward and more equipment is upgraded and unveiled. So with that said, how are you guys feeling about this change to the game? Or which weapon or armor are you most excited to get your hands on? Definitely let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing to the channel. Help the channel grow and help me hit my personal goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers. And that's really all I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.